So after all this happens, and I live caught Jeb's reaction, like, whoa. And I got on the phone and started calling some folks. Now, it took a while for them to call me back, but they got back in touch with me. And I said, so I took your advice, even though I didn't quite realize why. But there's some things I saw. Well, tell us what you saw. Wow, it's been since, December 22nd that these people have put anything active on social media. That's kind of a long time for them. And I asked these same sources, is this a direct correlation to what occurred at the Bush funeral? And I was told yes. The word I have heard is that several months ago, George W. Bush had been in contact with Trump, but essentially flipped.
Hey friends, before we begin this absolutely gripping interview with Dr. Dave Janda, I just want to let you know that YouTube is back at it again. Yep, the fascist modern-day book burners over there at YouTube have terminated a channel called Mental Boost and his backup channel, Mental Boost 2. His crime? Covering the cover-up of the massively destructive California fires. At this point, YouTube, this is pure tyranny because YouTube also recently terminated the channel Project Weeping Angel, which covered the crimes of the deep state. And stay tuned, friends, because toward the end of this interview, Dave Janda and I talk about the fascism, double standards, and hypocrisy of YouTube as it relates to his channel and my channel being victims of those who steal our content and re-upload it and get full monetization. And when we bring those channels to YouTube's attention, our pleas for justice are ignored, and those channels continue to profit from stolen content. It's for this reason I'm very grateful to have wonderful sponsors like Virtual Shield. You owe it to yourself to use one of the fastest virtual private networks in the world, Virtual Shield. Their no-log policy protects users from any data breaches. And this Christmas month, Virtual Shield is offering 35% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans. And don't forget about IdentiSafe, which allows you the ability to block off your computer microphone and camera access from any unwanted hackers or spies. And again, you're running out of time, but for the rest of December, you can save 35% off all VPN plans. You have the right to remain private. Do yourself a favor and get Virtual Shield. The link is below this video. Hey friends, welcome back. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance. Again, as I've been tweeting, I pray that 2019 is filled with mass arrests of traitors. I truly do. It's hard to know, though, what to believe anymore. I tell you what, it's getting very hard to even follow everything. Things are happening so quickly. And I wanted to get Dave Janda from Operation Freedom, DaveJanda.com, back on the line to help me digest all of it. There's so much to process. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back on your great platform with SGT Report. I watch it every day, Sean. I think you do unbelievably great work. And actually, I think that you're one of the very few people on YouTube that actually has the deep state, the globalist syndicate, petrified of what's coming down the line.
Well, back at you, brother. And we post all of your material as well. You're out there every single day putting up new reports that can't be found anywhere else. And you two are crushing the mainstream mockingbird media. I like to say that we're all in this mess together, but Q took it to one level further. It's where we go one, we go all, Dave. But I have to be honest with you. I am getting a little bit tired of hearing that mass arrests are just around the corner. Military tribunals are just around the corner. And yet we hear sound bites and updates like this from Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch. Listen to this.
Outrageously, this Justice Department is colluding with Clinton email witnesses to stop our efforts to gather evidence in federal court. President Trump should ask this Justice Department why it's still protecting Hillary Clinton.
And my question to you, Dave, is why is Judicial Watch doing all the heavy lifting? It would be very easy to indict Hillary Clinton at this point and just start rounding these people up.
Well, she, in my opinion, based on the information that you're aware of, that I'm aware of, Sean, if you and I had perpetuated this series of crimes that she has been involved with, you and I would have been in an orange jumpsuit years ago, if not decades ago.
Well, that's for sure.
And I think it speaks to the destruction of the rule of law in this country by the deep state And my feeling, Sean, and many people disagree with me on this, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, the McCains, the Romneys, the Ryans, the McConnells, the Pelosi's, the Soroses, are not the top of the pyramid, if you will, of the globalist syndicate of the deep state. They're middle-level puppets that are used to get, if you will, many of the minions in line and to keep the sheeple in line for the deep state, for the globalist syndicate. And I believe the only reason why they're not in prison is because they are these middle-level puppets. And the rule of law, along with a number of other institutions, whether it's the bought-off lamestream fake media, our educational system, Hollywood, Wall Street, have not only been infiltrated, they've not only been compromised, but they've been taken over by the deep state, by the criminal banking syndicate, the globalist syndicate, the New World Order crowd, whatever you want to call it, the shadow government. And this is why we haven't to date seen these people, if you will, exposed to the same rules, to the same regulations, to the same court system that you and myself and all of our viewers have been. Now, I do believe there have, and I understand the frustration. You're frustrated, I'm frustrated. I mean, just look at the declassification issue. I had been told by my contacts. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is what Q said. Well, maybe it is what Q said. The information I present is not from Q. The information I present is from contacts that I've made over a number of decades' time in our federal government. I became aware of this, if you will, civil war within our government as far back as 1988 when I first went to Washington to work on healthcare policy at the end of the Reagan administration. And that's when I was made aware of this shadow government, if you will, that we now call the deep state. And I also was aware that there are a group of patriots in every department of the government that are actually looking out for every American's freedoms and liberties and are following the Constitution, but they've been in hand-to-hand combat with this deep state crowd that essentially has had all the money and all the power, but that doesn't mean that these people haven't been fighting them over the decades. And where we are right now is that I believe the deep state is on its heels. And I believe it actually is on its heels because of the election of Donald Trump and the fact that he's been able to bring some of these, if you will, patriots, these freedom patriots, up to the surface, if you will, to positions of power where they can try to implement change. And this is what's been so frustrating, because what Donald Trump, and it's beyond one man, Sean, and this group of patriots, whether in their Defense Department or the intelligence agencies and Department of Homeland Security or Health and Human Services, or throughout the government, these people are battling many decades worth of the swamp, if you will, building its layers. So just look at the declassification issue. I believe the declassification issue is key for this whole ball of wax melting of the deep state. My contacts have told me, look, wait till after the primaries, and after the primaries, you're going to see a declassification of the original FISA warrants, of the 302 forms of Bruce Orr, and of the email and text communications between Comey and McCabe and several others like Strzok. And you'll see that after the end of the primaries, before the general election in 2018. Well, what did we see? The primaries ended. I think the last primary was end of the first week of September or so. And then on September 17th, Donald Trump came out and said, I want the FISA application for Carter Page. I want the 302 forms for Bruce Orr. I want the email and text messages between Comey and McCabe and several others immediately declassified in an unredacted fashion. And then all of a sudden, so he said that on September 17th. So that was kind of going along with the timing that I had been told. And this is where we get so frustrated. And I imagine President Trump is frustrated. And next thing we know, things are being slow walked through the Justice Department, which goes along with what Tom Fenton was saying. And the reason is because there are still many layers of the deep state, of the swamp, as President Trump calls it, as you and I probably refer to it as a septic tank.
That are still in positions of power.
Still in position, that can still block. And in particular, that SES level, right? That are appointed and have been appointed by deep state players for whether it's through both Bush administrations or the 2 terms of Clinton or the 2 terms of Obama. And so these layers are so thick and so many that they can slow walk things. And I think the reason why Sessions ended up being terminated, moving on, if you will, was because he was, I believe, tasked to, let's make sure that these documents are declassified and pushed out. And because Sessions was slow walking them, and it probably was because he was trying to march these through the different layers of the swamp rather than just, here you go. I think because they were slow walked, I think that's why Sessions ultimately got the thanks very much, you're gone.
Yeah. I want to ask you.
It's very frustrating for all of us.
No.
So what I'm saying is that many people believe that the declassification event is not going to occur. My sources across the board from different agencies, different departments have all told me they believe the declassification event will occur. And the timing, what they've told me, is now on President Trump. He can declassify. Even though they're being slow walked by Justice Department, it's my understanding the president in one fell swoop can say, you're slow walking them, I don't care, they're declassified. What I've been told is that President Trump has a time frame of when he's going to do this. It's not your time frame, my time frame, or any of our viewers' time frame, because if it was up to us, it would have happened long ago. But he has this on a timeline, as I've been told, and initially it was middle of September. That has been pushed back based on some other events that are going to occur that prior to the declassification.
All right.
That's what I've been told, as frustrating as that is. Now, Sean, we did see some movement actually in December with the hearing of the 2 individuals who were stated to be whistleblowers who testified in front of Congress. I think is Moynihan and Doyle.
Yeah, but Huber didn't show up, which was a tremendous disappointment to all of us who thought Huber was going to show up and update the GOP on the Clinton Foundation fraud and sedition and treachery.
Well, a couple things. That hearing was about the Clinton Foundation. It's my understanding when Huber was tasked in this role from Sessions as a prosecutor, it was my understanding he had 2 directives, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but what I've been told is he was given 2 directives, one looking at the Clinton email issue, and the second looking at at how the Trump administration was, if you will, shackled with this Russian collusion issue. Those were the 2 issues I've been told he was tasked with. Now, he wasn't specifically tasked, as I understand it, with investigating the Clinton Foundation. And it was also my understanding in watching that hearing that Doyle and Moynihan at one point, and I believe Mark Meadows, Congressman Meadows was asking this question, they got into the fact where both Doyle and Moynihan stated that they believed and they were knowledgeable about an active criminal investigation run through the Little Rock field office of the FBI of the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
Okay. Now, I've spoken to several criminal attorneys that deal with the criminal courts. And what they told me is that if there's an ongoing criminal investigation, that if Huber, who was a prosecutor, was brought there and then those statements were made that Doyle and Moynihan made about an active criminal investigation that was being run through the FBI, then it would have been turned to Huber, well, what do you know about this? And if Huber would have given any type of answer, or actually would have even been present, it could have been used at a later time in a court of law that the prosecution of that entity, that being the Clinton Foundation, could have been thrown out based on a prosecutor being present and speaking of, or even addressing or in the same vicinity of an issue about an active criminal investigation. That's what
Right.
I've been told. And I have to say, these attorneys who told me that, they're not Trump supporters.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think let's just back up and let's give people a little bit of good news, the potentiality of good news here. Of course, the Little Rock, Arkansas investigation is a big deal. We remember the 8/8/18 landing of the DOJ FBI 757 landing in Little Rock twice, being loaded up with tons and tons of documents. Okay, so we know, and my friend Corey Lynn over at CoreyDiggs.com has done excellent work
Outstanding.
about the Arkansas swamp. So we know there are serious investigations happening. People are already being sentenced to prison terms, long-term prison terms, legislators, state legislators, insiders. So we know this is real. But let's talk about that funeral, George H.W. Bush's funeral. There's so many videos on YouTube rehashing that funeral and showing those incredibly powerful reactions, shocking reactions given by Jeb Delora Bush. We saw a strange reaction from Joe Biden. All of these people, the Obamas, the Clintons, they'd all been given little envelopes. And there's much speculation about what those envelopes said, what was in them. Were they indictments? I think that document was, it appeared to be too small to be indictments to me, but lots of speculation about what's in those. And the point I want to make is that this president is under attack by the deep state. We know who the deep state is. It's people like, well, you just responded to John Brennan on Twitter. Brennan wrote this on December 20th, guys. Keep in mind that date. He said, okay, Republicans, how much longer are you going to let this farcical presidency continue? At a time of such political, economic, and geostrategic turbulence, both nationally and globally, are you waiting for a catastrophe to happen before acting? Disaster looms. Before acting. What does that mean? They want to impeach this man. And you responded, it's obvious you are panicked, desperate, and the walls are closing in on your blatant treason and seditious acts. Your histrionics are indicative of someone who is about to be trumped. Good truth on you there, Dave. Here's my point. We have not heard from these people now since December 22nd or earlier in terms of new tweets. We had an old recycled picture from the Clintons sent out for their Christmas tweet. We had a 2014 image from the Obamas that they tried to pass off as new. And we have not heard any new tweets from John Podesta, George W. Bush, John Brennan, John Kerry, or Joe Biden since December 22nd or earlier. Is it possible that something is happening? And what do you make of those reactions at that funeral?
Well, let me take you back to the day before the funeral. I had spoken to several of my contacts, and they asked me if I was going to be watching the funeral. And I said, no, I'm not going to waste my time watching a Bush funeral. I mean, these folks are middle-level puppets of the deep state. They've caused immense harm to our country. These accolades and this fawning over this family when I've been in direct opposition to what they've been involved with for many years. I go, I'm not going to take my time to watch that. And they go, you need to watch it. And I go, why? Because you need to watch it. You'll be interested to see what, and just keep a close eye on what transpires. So that was the day before. And then the event happened, and watching it live, I saw Hillary open her program, and something fell out. And poor Jimmy Carter, I remember watching. He's like, hey, Rosalind, did we? Oh,
yeah. He's like, where's mine?
Oh yeah, he was really bummed out. I felt kind of bad for him, but then I'm thinking, well, that's kind of odd. And her reaction, Hillary's reaction when she looked at that note was not one of, oh, isn't that nice? And then, but I didn't see Pence get an envelope. I did later, the Pence family or the Bidens, or I had just seen Hillary because I was wanting, boom, it fell out. And of course, Jimmy Carter being bummed he didn't get one. But then when the Trumps walked in, it's very interesting. Hillary, it was like a teacher walking into a schoolroom and all the kids got caught red-handed doing something, right? The whole first row, they all just shut up, right? And they all just started kind of looking down, and Hillary, stone-faced, and
let me interject here, because I just want to say something about Trump and his backbone, his steely reserve. Yeah, we saw what he said to Hillary during that famous debate in which he said, because you'd be in jail.
Yes.
A man has a steely reserve, and frankly, courage, of his resolve, because he went out of his way not to shake the hands of Bill and Hillary.
Mhm.
Just as when Madam Merkel was in the Oval Office,
Yeah.
he did not shake her hand. And that's a very hard thing to do. We tend to acquiesce and shake hands even with, just because we want to keep the peace, and it's the socially comfortable thing to do. This man is a steely reserve.
And so might I say, Sean, does Melania. I'll tell you something. I think she provides tremendous support to his backbone, and I'll tell you why. Because she also didn't shake Bill and Hillary's hand, but
Right.
But there was something else that happened when it walked in, and at the time I saw it, and I thought, wow, that's really odd. The Pences were sitting right behind where the Trumps were. He and Melania, they did not acknowledge the Pences. They did not shake their hands. They just sat down. I thought that was, and he handed his overcoat to the Marine, and he easily, because he walked in, he saw so there was no interaction with the Pences, none, for either of them. So that was, I thought, interesting. And then, of course, we fast forward to when they're moving the casket out, and then we had what Laura showed Jeb. And, I suggest Jeb never play poker because, boy, he sure let it out that there was something that he sure wasn't expecting, and something that just didn't quite fit into his future plans when he saw what Laura showed him.
It looked literally like your accountant just handed you your statement of your account that you thought had $10 million in it, and he said, "I'm sorry, you've lost everything. You're bankrupt." I mean, that was the look the man gave. And then right after that, George Bush bows his head, almost looking like he was filled with shame or guilt.
Right. If you'd like, I can tell you what I was told.
Yes, of course.
By
please.
folks that I trust and have known for years, that actually were the same people that told me to watch the funeral the day before. So after all this happens, and I live caught Jeb's reaction. Whoa. And I got on the phone and started calling some folks. Now, it took a while for them to call me back, but they got back in touch with me. And I said, so I took your advice, even though I didn't quite realize why. But there's some things I saw. Well, tell us what you saw. And I told them about Hillary's envelope, and they said, well, she wasn't the only one. And this was, within hours of this happening. And then as the days went on, we saw the Pences got one, the Bidens got one. I was also told a number of other people in that cathedral sitting further back also got envelopes. Not everybody, but certain few also did. And what I was told was in those envelopes on that side, not the Bush family, but on over to those folks that we've kind of identified, the Pences, the Bidens, the Hillarys, the Obamas, was essentially a list of coming attractions. And I believe, and I've asked folks, because I mentioned your observation that, wow, it's been since, December 22nd, that these people have put anything active on social media. It's kind of a long time for them. And I said, I asked these same sources, is this a direct correlation to what occurred at the Bush funeral? And I was told yes. Now with Jeb, that was a little something different, as I understand it. Earlier in the ceremony, or in the funeral ceremony, George Bush was seen writing something down, like a note. And it was my understanding is as the casket passed, he passed that note to Laura, who then in turn showed it to Jeb. And it's my understanding that that note had something to do with Pence. Pence was very close, as I understand it, with the Bush family. In fact, I think the latest Super Bowl, wasn't Pence in George H.W.'s suite he was in, I believe?
I don't know that, but I have heard some very troubling things about Pence and his history. His former, was he the governor? Which state was he governor?
Governor of Indiana.
I've heard some very, very disturbing things about him and the potentiality for him being involved in the cover-up of child trafficking and things of that nature. I've not dove into that specifically, but one does, it gives me pause.
It gives me pause as well. And it's my understanding he was very close with the Bush family. And it was I've been told that what was passed to Jeb was an indication that if they saw Pence as their insurance policy for protection, their insurance policy for their operation, the Bush family operation continuing to run smoothly, it was my understanding that the note that was passed to Jeb was an indication that Pence could no longer be considered an insurance policy.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. We were speaking about Arkansas and all of the investigations going on down there. Have you seen this document that appears to be an indictment of George Herbert Walker Bush dated September 10th, 2018? It is do you want me to read some of this to you? This was sent to me by a reader and a supporter. It's a common grand jury demand, and the defendants are George Herbert Walker Bush of the Carlyle Group. And just the first two paragraphs are very interesting, and it makes me wonder if this is a legitimate document. It appears to be. Do you want me to read this at all?
If you wish, go right ahead. I've seen it. The problem I have with the document is that I don't believe it's in a form that is indicative of it being used in a legal proceeding in our criminal courts, or even in a tribunal setting.
The document I have here appears to be typeset correctly, in my opinion, but let me just, for the sake of reading the first two paragraphs, tell me if this doesn't seem to ring true, all right, whether or not this is a legitimate document. Memorandum for order of the formal prosecution of money laundering, racketeering to violate FCPA and change mining law. Honorable John Dan Kemp, September 10th, 2018, defendant George Herbert Walker Bush of Carlyle Group. Says the allegations concerning breaking a form of the Logan Act through use of a conspiracy to undermine national mining laws are serious enough as to warrant another superseding indictment against defendant George Herbert Walker Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush in private, it says in parentheses. Due to this fact, Your Honors, we will order defendant to be read the Riot Act. These acts were committed beside the seditions involved in Uranium One. They concern human trafficking and conspiring to defraud the United States, in parentheses, betray the United States. One more paragraph here. The accused defendant, George Herbert Walker Bush, has broken national racketeering laws that fall under 18 U.S.C. 1961 and 18 U.S.C. 371 in order to enrich himself and the Carlyle Group. This has been done in a coordinated attack pattern that begins in a mining contract that is illegally signed in South Africa and ends with the Operation Eagle II over a period of 40 years. As a result of these indiscretions, several states and their institutions, including Nevada, end up losing their land rights. The plan we have hard evidence for involves mining the settlers out, defrauding the government, and moving the operators tied to Barrick Gold, Nevada, and BHP Billiton in-house to strip all residents of their land, patent, deeds. If you go on and read this document, it really rings true because I know of all the corruption going on with Barrick Gold. I followed the precious metals for a very long time, and Barrick Gold, I've done entire interviews exposing Barrick Gold for their crimes and collusion with the deep state bankers. One wonders what was going on with George Herbert Walker Bush prior to his death.
Well, the indications I've had for many, many years have been the Bush family have been involved in what you've presented. And in particular, I guess if I had to classify it, they have been very close with the Carlyle. They're actively involved with the Carlyle Group, which I believe has some very shady business dealings. In addition, it's my understanding that the Bush family has been involved in many different fronts of nefarious and criminal activity. And that's primarily the reason why, Sean, when I was asked the day before the funeral if I was going to watch George H.W. Bush's funeral, my answer was absolutely not.
I know. Me too. Me too. He didn't deserve my reverence.
Something you need to watch because there are things that you're going to need to be aware of. So the bottom line is that when I saw that document a while back, and I shared it with several people, and although the information presented, folks didn't seemed to have a problem with or believed that it was wrong. It was the manner in which it was presented and worded, where they felt that it was not a document that could be used in a criminal case, or for that matter, even a tribunal setting, to prosecute someone.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, because this supposedly appeared in the Arkansas Supreme Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas. And again, we see all of that criminal investigation going on down in Arkansas. Well,
the other thing, Sean, about the funeral is you mentioned about George Bush, W. Bush, bringing his head down almost in shame. I think that the reason why he did that, because I think at one point Laura, right after she showed Jeb, said, "Is this real?" or something like that to him, and he was, "Yup." And the word I have heard is that several months ago, George W. Bush had been in contact with Trump, but essentially flipped, and essentially let President Trump know that he couldn't go on with the way business was being done.
Well, actually, you know what's interesting about that? Tell me how you feel about George W. Bush, the son of this despicable New World Order kingpin. Because what if you were born into a family like that? And maybe you weren't born with a black heart and a black soul, but you were the son to this guy, the father, the former director of the CIA, somebody who has, his father, Prescott Bush, attempted the coup of the United States government back in 1934, 1933, and they recruited General Smedley Butler. And of course, there were congressional hearings. This is all on the record. These people were traitors. Nobody went to prison. Then he becomes president. Then his son becomes president. Then on his son's watch, 9/11 happens. The orchestrated false flag event, 9/11 is pulled off. And the son is sitting there essentially being puppeteered by his father. If George W. Bush doesn't have a black heart and a black soul, maybe he decided to play ball. Maybe he decided to turn state's evidence. Maybe he decided to, I don't know. I don't know what happened with George W. Bush, but I don't think he's nearly as evil as his father. The puppet master who was most evil in his administration was Cheney. Of course, there's a movie out about that now called Vice.
In my career in medicine as an orthopedic surgeon, I had the opportunity to take care of a number of people in the mafia because they had conditions and came to me. And it's interesting. I got to know some of these people pretty well. And I would ask them questions that you probably could never get away with, even if you were a neighbor of them. But I got to know them pretty well. And I said, it's obvious that, you are involved in organized crime. Have you ever thought of leaving? And these several folks that I had spoken to about this were born into it. Were born into a family already established within the mafia. And the response was the same. This is all I've known my whole life. And once you're in this, you're never allowed to leave. And it could be after his mother died, who I understood Barbara as actually being very involved in the family business. Yeah. Once his mother died and his father really having significant ill health, maybe he saw it as his opportunity to try. Folks are going to get upset when you hear it say try to make amends, but not that you can make amends, but you can try, I guess, to try to make amends and try to, if you will, come clean, to try to save not just himself, but maybe the remainder of his family from the activities that his father and his grandfather and whoever else in the family had been involved with. And I don't want to pass this off as saying, look, if you're complicit in something, whether you wanted to do it or not, if you were complicit in it, if you were involved in it, you're guilty also.
Yeah, but frankly, as it relates to 9/11, I don't think George W. Bush probably knew jack diddly about what was going down that day, especially based on his behavior the day of. It seemed to me like he was bushwhacked on that whole thing, and the powers that be above him pulled off 9/11. And of course, when I say the powers that be behind him, I'm talking about the alphabet agencies, the Mossad, and people like George H.W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, the people with the power to get the Pentagon to stand down that morning and allow those planes to go unfettered all across the country. I don't know that George W. Bush played much of a role, if any, in what went down on 9/11. Now, certainly he was involved in the cover-up,
Right.
but in the event itself, which I think President Trump knows very well was a false flag operation and not at all what we've been told officially, I don't know that George W. Bush had much of anything to do with that event.
And I would agree with you, but also disagree a bit. You know, when he was reading that story, when Andrew Card came in and mentioned that the towers had been attacked, the fact that he sat there for a period of time continuing with the story, look, if that was Dave Janda sitting there and Andrew Card just said, these planes have hit the World Trade Center,
You'd be up and out of there. Right.
my immediate response would be, I love you kids. I got to handle a problem. I'm sorry, I have to leave immediately.
Right.
Okay. And you didn't have to say, hey, by the way, kids, guess what? You know, the World Trade Center was just hit. This could be, you didn't have to go that, but he could say, you know what? Something just came up and it's really important. And I love you guys. And I'll do everything I can to come back and spend more time with you. Gotta go. Bye. But the fact that he just sat there and kind of chewed his lip and kind of, to me, was at least an indication that prior to that, he knew something was up. And maybe he didn't know the exact details. Maybe he didn't know when, where, you know, but just his reaction to me was not, it was not, if you will, commensurate with somebody who was taken completely off guard that something was going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, if there's to be truth and reconciliation for some of these people, if not everybody is going to go to Gitmo, then we need people like George W. Bush to cooperate. And I think the White Hats may have had an opportunity to put some pressure on him when his dad got so darn sick and was going senile. And now that he's gone, you know, the son is really unprotected now at this point. So let's get back to this idea of white hats. Let's get back to this idea that the tribunals that Kavanaugh and Graham talked about during the Supreme Court nominees hearings.
American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right. There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
And those people at the funeral are panicked because they know they no longer have the witch in the White House. They don't have the power to stack the deck any longer. How much power do the White Hats have to try those who are guilty of treason and sedition? And could it be happening right now as we're having this conversation?
Well, this is what I believe, Sean. If you have to look at the reaction to many of these people. You read John Brennan's tweet from December 20th, I believe it was. Hillary has had some equally hysterical tweets in the past couple months. Clapper, equally hysterical tweets. We've seen a number of just histrionic behavior in social media from these people. And I believe that's an indication that, as I mentioned in what I tweeted back, that they're desperate, they're panicked, they feel the walls are caving in. And they are lashing out. And this is not from a position of strength. This is from a position of weakness. And I actually, and you spoke earlier, Sean, about the hearing where Huber wasn't there. I actually thought it was more powerful with what Moynihan and Doyle did. And it could be the reason why they were focused, that people were focused, saying, oh, Huber's going to testify. And I get it. He was on the docket until that day, was maybe to divert attention to him so that Moynihan and Doyle could walk in and do what they had to do. That testimony that they gave was devastating. I mean, they said, we have the evidence that the Clinton Foundation was acting as a foreign agent. Oh, okay. We have evidence that they were engaged in activities that had nothing to do with the charter that they were given by the IRS for being a charitable foundation. We have evidence that between $450 million and $2.5 billion was laundered through the Clinton Foundation, that they were involved in money laundering activities, that they were involved in issues related to drug issues, drug sales, this was all stuff that these guys said. I mean, this was devastating, that they were commingling funds with their personal use, such as going on vacations. And that anyone who donated to the Clinton Foundation should have been aware of this activity so they can be on the hook for not only paying those taxes that they took as deductions, but also penalties associated with it. I mean, this was devastating.
Yeah, but you know what's ironic, Dave?
They brought out that there was an open criminal investigation by the FBI.
Right. But here's the ironic part. It's Trump's foundation that's been closed down. It's CNN talking about the fraud and corruption at the Trump Foundation and ignoring the blatant treason, sedition, and corruption coming from the Clinton Foundation.
I believe the reason why the Trump family shut it down is because they don't want to divert attention. By shutting it down, it shuts that off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, what they did is they said, okay, you're going to go there, boom, shut it off. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation again. Okay. And the point is that if they would even though that I believe the Trump Foundation was acting legitimately and was targeted for political reasons, I believe they said, okay, you want to play that game? We'll play that game. Boom. We're closing that book. Let's open that book of the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah. All righty. Well, you know what? We're going long here, but let's go on with one more subject here, and it's one that you brought up in the pre-call, which I think is brilliant. Let's talk about this, and it's Jerome Corsi's $350 million lawsuit against Mueller. So you and I both know that what President Trump has said about Mueller's investigation is 100% true. It's a witch hunt. Mm-hmm. And everything these Democrats accuse this president of doing is what they themselves are guilty of having done. Colluding with the Russians, Uranium One, faking dossiers, faking evidence, wiretapping illegally American citizens. Everything they accuse the president of doing is what they themselves are guilty of. And exactly. Jerome Corsi, just like Roger Stone, has been the target of Mueller. They're trying to get something on Trump because they don't have anything. So they're trying to fabricate evidence or lies or get these people to lie about President Trump and Russiagate, Russian collusion. And Jerome Corsi, who is one of these guys who's targeted by Mueller, has had the tenacity and frankly fortitude, I give him credit, to stand up and say, hey, I'm not going to lie about the president. You can't get me to lie about the president. And I'm going to sue you for what you've done to me. What is it, to suborn perjury? Is that what he's going after Mueller for?
Yes, he is.
Can you explain that and flush that out? And why would that even bother Mueller a bit? The man's got nothing to hide, does he?
Well, I think he has a whole lot to hide, and it starts with Uranium One.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Sean. Jerome Corsi, I've had him actually on my radio show, Operation Freedom, a couple of times, and I was actually a big fan of his for years. Then about a year ago, he started to say some things where, frankly, I started to question his loyalty to the freedom movement.
Yeah, me too.
And then he got hit with this subpoena for Mueller, and I think spent 40 hours under interrogation with Mueller's people. And he came out, and around Thanksgiving, it was, hey, I'm gonna plea, and and then all of a sudden, he turned around. It was like over the weekend of Thanksgiving, and came out and said, you know what? Heck with that. I'm going to press charges because here is what one of Mueller's team members told me to do. They wanted me to lie, and they, as you mentioned, suborn perjury. They wanted me to lie so that I could implicate the president. And what kicked me off that, hey, wait a minute, it seems like, well, you were questioning where, of course, he was going there for a while, like a year ago about the freedom movement, but Corsi made a move over Thanksgiving weekend where he hired Larry Klayman. Now, my experience with Larry Klayman, I've had him on the show a number of times. My experience with Larry Klayman, and he is a bulldog, and he is fearless, and he despises the deep state, and the deep state just despises him. I have seen him take positions. I know for a fact he helped someone I know very well who was being illegally surveilled by the National Security Agency. Larry, when no one would help this person, Larry stepped in, helped that person, and won the verdict. against the NSA in favor of this American citizen. So Larry's tough. And for Larry to take the case tells me he felt that Jerome Corsi not only had a case, but Jerome Corsi was playing on the freedom side of the equation. And Larry Klayman and Jerry Corsi have filed a $350 million lawsuit against Mueller and his team for them trying to get Jerry Corsi to lie, to implicate the president. And the feedback I have from my sources on that is that Mueller and his team are really, really worried about that. That Klayman, along with Jerry Corsi, have the evidence and are in the driver's seat on that. And Larry Klayman is not afraid to continue to push through on that.
Good.
So here we go. The tables have been flipped a bit. And then add to that, we have the issue of obstruction of justice by Mueller's team when it came to those text messages, right, between getting rid of 19,000 of them, right, between Strzok and Page. And add to that the whole issue about the 302 forms with General Flynn. So this has been a particularly bad month for the deep state that thought they could, through, quote, legitimate channels, that being the Mueller team, take down President Trump, his administration, and the freedom movement.
Excellent. Well, I think it's very significant that Corsi and Klayman are trying to turn the tables on Mueller, because it's high time that somebody does that. And again, as Tom Fitton has long lamented, he's standing out there by himself, and he's not getting any help from the DOJ when the DOJ should be doing the heavy lifting that Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch are doing.
And I think that all stems back, Sean, to what you said earlier, is the fact that there are so many deep state players, and it's so deep that people are slow walking a lot of these investigations, hoping that something else is going to happen so that they don't have to proceed. Jerry Corsi and Larry Klayman, I believe, are going to court on January 3rd, 2019, against Mueller and his team. So we'll have an indication of what's happening by January 3rd on that.
All right, great. Well, I know that the enemies of Trump, the enemies of the people, are trying to run out the clock. That's all they're trying to do, because they don't have truth on their side. So they're trying to get through this 4-year presidency and get somebody else in there. I don't think they're going to be able to impeach him. All right, last thing. I just want to do a channel update. In the pre-call, you mentioned that you finally got word back from YouTube about your monetization. You applied for monetization 11 months ago. They finally got back to you. You can share the punchline with people here in a minute, but I've been seeing some really despicable things happen with my channel. They demonetize all of my most recent interviews, and then many of those interviews get stolen and uploaded by other YouTube channels. I find them on those channels, and they have ads on them. So other people steal my content, which is demonetized, they re-upload it, and they get monetized. Explain that to me.
I wish I could. And that's exactly what happened to me. My channel was never monetized. And we applied for monetization, as you mentioned, 11 months ago. And we just heard back that we did not get approved for monetization because my content was seen as duplicate. Well, the reason it was seen as duplicate is a number of channels that have already been approved for monetization took my original pieces off of Operation Freedom YouTube channel, took my original pieces, put them on their channels, were immediately monetized, and now they're reading my original content that these folks stole, obviously, after I put it on my channel first. My original content is being read as duplicate. You can't make this stuff up. So in other words, they come into your house, they steal your car, right? And you're supposed to be, and then some people will come back to say, well, you should be grateful that these people took your content because they're networking your information.
Yeah, right. It's the insurance company saying, no, we're not going to pay you for your stolen car. Your car is alive and well. It's right across the street in your neighbor's driveway.
Right. And in fact, your car was used to just rob a bank. Huh?
I've had it. It's absolutely enraging. I mean, we saw what Patreon did to Sargon of Akkad. They just terminated his entire Patreon account because of something he said on somebody else's YouTube channel that never even appeared on Patreon. These social media companies are out of absolute control. They're out of control. And I just want to shine light on one of these thieving channels. The name of the channel that's stealing my content, and I believe your content as well, and monetizing it, is a channel ironically called The Truth. And you'll notice, folks, if you go and find this Despicable Thieves channel, he's disabled comments because he knows people know what he's up to. But I have to say, folks, you cannot support a channel like this. I go and I watch my Liz Crokin interviews that are stolen and re-uploaded with ads on his site, and they have all of these glowing thumbs up, 99 thumbs up, 1 thumbs down. This is a thief who's stealing the hard original work of others and getting paid for it with ads, advertising.
Well, and it goes beyond stealing our work. There's a channel out there. Now, the only original content I put up is on Operation Freedom and on DaveJanda.com, period. There is a channel out there, Sean, that has stolen my name, Dr. Dave Janda 2. And I'm constantly getting people complaining to me going, why do you have music in the middle of your video on Dr. Dave Janda 2? Well, it's because I have nothing to do with it. Yeah. We went after them for stealing my content, of which now we've got all these copyright strikes. They've taken my stuff down. So we went to YouTube. We said, they've stolen my name. I mean, and YouTube will not take down that channel.
Yeah, that's just outrageous. You can't get relief when somebody steals your name. I mean, honestly, you can't tell me they're not out to get us, Dave. Well, we know they are, right? I'm being rhetorical. Of course they are. They're targeting conservative and libertarian and constitutional speech. That's what they're doing.
And they're trying to starve us out, right?
And they're absolutely trying to starve us out. And I'll tell you what's so despicable about this idiot who's stealing my content and content of people like you is they actually give us a bad name. They're not helping us spread the message because they're re-uploading interviews or snippets of interviews that are 6 months or a year old, and then they put a new slate on them that says December 24th, new interview with Liz Crokin. No, it's old news, and it makes us look foolish. And salt in the wound, he's getting ads on those videos. It's just shocking. It's just absolutely shocking.
It's hard to believe that this could occur.
Well, and then I contact YouTube because as a YouTube partner, I have the name of somebody I can contact, and I still have trouble getting relief. I still have trouble getting a response. I still have trouble getting those videos taken down or that channel disabled. I'll tell you, man, it is a world filled with hypocrisy. That's the bottom line, is there anything you hate more than hypocrisy? I mean, we see it all day long from the left. We see it all day long from the deep state, and it just makes me want to puke. We see it all day long from CNN.
And that's what gets people so frustrated. This is why people say, and rightfully so, I'm really upset I don't see anybody like the Clintons or the Bushes or the Obamas in orange jumpsuits. And meanwhile, people are getting traffic tickets for driving 62 and the speed limit's 60. Come on. Yeah. You got to be kidding me. And I get it. I completely agree.
Yeah. It's really, really starting to wear us all out because what we all are praying for is justice. And we'll wrap it up where we began. I pray that in 2019, we see high-level arrests of those who have been traitors to this country. That's all we're asking for. I don't think that's too much to ask for in 2019, Dave.
Neither do I.
All right. Dave, tell people how they can find you. You do fantastic work. Tell them about the YouTube channel and your radio show.
Radio show is live. It's a live radio show every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. They can stream the show live free at DaveJanda.com. Just go to the upper right-hand corner. We have a free site, a public site at DaveJanda.com where we upload information on a very regular basis, content. We also have a subscription site to DaveJanda.com that is 30 cents a day, $9 for a month. If folks want, they can sign up for a month and get rid of it if they don't like it. But again, as Sean mentioned, the information we provide are through my sources I've had for many years. So the information is very different and nothing you'll ever see in the bought-off lamestream fake media. We have our WTF geopolitical analysis show. We have our Insider Insight show. Folks, subscribers have access to our podcast and our healthcare briefing section. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is the only approved original content YouTube of my material, which is Operation Freedom. And of course, folks can join us there. And I thank you, Sean, for everything you do on a daily basis. You are truly the tip of the spear, if you will, of the freedom movement.
I'm blushing. No, thank you so much. And look, I've said this a million times, Dave. I'll say it again. We're all in this mess together. And for those who say, I'm just one guy, I can't make a difference, look at Tom Fitton. Look at Dave Janda. Look at Barbara Honegger and Richard Gage and all of the people moving the needle on the 9/11 false flag. They're getting a 9/11 grand jury impaneled. Things are happening, folks. Our cup is half full, and thank God, maybe, just maybe, in 2019, we will see these people who have committed sedition and treason pay for their crimes in a very public way. Our guest has been Dr. Dave Janda from Operation Freedom on YouTube, guys, and DaveJanda.com. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Sean.
And thank you guys so much for all you do. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support. If this interview resonated with you, do share it within your sphere of influence on social media. And for real news 24/7, please visit us at sgtreport.com. God bless. Bye-bye.
They spelled out in detail how they were going to do it. The shadow government, a network of central banks, a graduated income tax, tax-exempt foundations to be able to shelter their own wealth from taxation. The taxation they were going to put against earnings, earned income, the mark of the middle class. They spelled all of these things out. They spelled out how they would need to poison the people they didn't want.